Welcome. You have arrived at STEM City USA, a safe and trusted community where you can find people and resources to help you become everything you are and beyond, accessible to all who reach for the stars.
But now something very special has happened, a major shift, a generational shift. The Metaverse, something very, very special that drags us to success, whether we want to be successful or not. So all of these things have one common thread. METAQUAKE USA is everything will always be live. Welcome, everyone, and to all of our viewers there in the General Johnny Wilson Hall in the Linda Gooden Training Building. I'm Tyrone Taborn, and I want to welcome you to METAQUAKE USA. We're taking you on a journey leading up to my book in September, METAQUAKE USA. What is the Metaverse and how will it impact you? Our journey is to introduce you to people who have been involved in the technology leading up to and the technology that will go beyond what the metaverse is. We want to really make sure you understand the foundation of this whole new technology that is more than a redistribution of technology, but a reset of technology. The world is changing so quickly, and the metaverse is actually resetting the opportunities for all of us to truly participate and play. So this journey that we're going on, every week, I'm going to introduce you to individuals who have already proven themselves. They're going to tell you about who they are. They're going to share with you, more importantly, their vision of tomorrow. But listen, let's take a break. On the other side, I've got an exciting guest for you that I think will help shape what we're doing on the defense and military side and protecting our great nation. I'll see you in a minute. METAQUAKE USA is everything will always be live.
METAQUAKE USA with Tyrone Taborn will be right back after these messages.
What if you could build your own city? A place where every child can find nurturing people to help them achieve their full potential. A place where every adult can access job training support. Where health education is abundant. Where social justice ruled the land. A place without limitations. Welcome. You have arrived at STEM City USA. It is what every city should be. A safe and trusted community where you find people and resources to help you become everything you are and beyond. STEM City is unlike anything you have ever experienced. It is a digital twin of the world around you, only better. STEM City is about energy and soul renewal. It is more than a digital world. You can almost feel the power of live cultural events, music, and theater. STEM City promises a better future for children with caring mentors and hands-on activities with dedicated tutors to support our youth. STEM City is your passport to a healthy lifestyle with weekly events addressing our community's many issues. STEM City is your financial well-being with helpful information on wealth management, career advancement, job training, and so much more. STEM City is the community you deserve. It is the city where your dreams can come true. STEM City USA, a place in the sky that is accessible to all who reach for the stars.
METAQUAKE USA is everything will always be live.
Welcome back to METAQUAKE USA. with Tyrone Taborn.
And welcome back to MetaQuake USA. I don't even know where to begin with this particular person. I've known him for years. As a student, he is Dr. Christopher Jones, the 2016 Black Engineer of the Year. And let me just stop for a second and tell you, we have only had 36 top Black Engineer of the Year awardees in over 36 years. The nominations that have come in have exceeded 10,000 people who have been nominated for various awards in this area. 36. Dr. Christopher Jones is one. He is the former vice president at Northrop Grumman. He is a great supporter. And I like to bring him on. Dr. Jones, first of all, I'm happy to say this again. Congratulations for being inducted into the National Academy of Engineering.
Yeah, thanks, Ty. That was a great honor, a complete surprise to me, but happy to represent all of the organizations, my family and military that helped me get to that point, including BEA. Without BEA, I wouldn't have been able to have the accomplishments I've had in my career in industry. So all of those have been building blocks and the successes that I enjoy today. So thanks for the many years of support and friendship.
That's pretty powerful to say that, because it does take a community. It takes all of us working with each other, being pulled up and pulling others up.
Right.
Let's talk about technology.
Mm-hmm.
Your background in the military,
mm-hmm.
Moving from being a veteran, going into Northrop Grumman.
Mm-hmm.
Take us from the very beginning and bring us up to today, the role of technology, and we can focus in on training and operations.
Okay, yeah, I can certainly do that, and tie a little bit into the topic of this discussion, about the metaverse. And so what I'd like to do, I'm a little bit poisoned because I'm a PhD student, and I have a PhD. So I did a lot of research. And if you really, I'll spend a few minutes to answer that question. If you look at humanity, humans in general, in the continuing evolution of human interaction and existence, we can go back. Technology has been a foundational element of that. So if you go all the way back to even pre-language, right? There was grunts and gestures and motions, then language was invented, then books. Then we were able to do teletype and Morse code, so we'd be able to communicate at a distance. Then there was radio and walkie-talkie, so we could talk to each other and interact just only voice. Then there's a telephone. This isn't an exhaustive, but then there was TV, right? So we were able to get information via a screen. Then we moved into video. So we were able to interact, still 2D. And then we have the internet, which is where we are today, right? So you and I are using the internet to interact, to create this content, to store it, and then it will be used and disseminated for other people in our audience. And so you would ask yourself then, what would be next, along that journey of technology? And then I'll get back to from a military standpoint. So you think about the metaverse, just taking what we're doing today. I always like to start with reality. So what you and I are doing today, what would make that better? What would be better about it? Right? That's a fundamental question. So perhaps if you and I perceived we were in the same space, right now, you're somewhere, I'm somewhere. But if we could perceive that we are in the same space, the same physical location, even though we're not, right? So we'd have 3D presence. It would feel like it's immersive. We could have photorealistic renditions of each other, not avatars. And so I could perceive your facial expressions, your gestures, all the nonverbal communication in a way that's difficult to do 2D screen. So if we were to create that environment, then the audience who's going to eventually watch this video could be there as well. So this thing we create in what will become the metaverse won't even be called a video, just like the term video was invented essentially for the 2-3 environment, what we would do and we would create it in the metaverse would be called something else. And that audience member could then participate. A bunch of audience members could participate in this 3D environment. They could look to each other and say, yeah, Chris doesn't know what he's talking about, or ha, that's what we thought the metaverse was. It's really not. Or, oh, let's see what else Tyrone and Chris have. Let's go. Or, oh, let's go someplace else. Maybe there would be economy, so it costs 99 cents. We could create a lot of this content like we're doing now, created in the metaverse in the same way what we're doing now is created in the internet and offer it. So were all that to exist, you can imagine how much our life would change and how we interact with each other. And so when you think about what the metaverse is and where it's going, I like to think about, the impact, the visualization of it versus the more technical details or the kind of book definition of a pervasive virtual environment that allows interaction. I just look at what we're doing now and what two people similarly will be doing 10 years from now. So then if I go back to your question on the military and training, simulation, operations, it's been a similar journey. When I joined, a lot of training was a manual. You would read a manual, and then if you were something hands-on, you maybe replicate that activity on something. Let's say you were doing maintenance on a jet engine. And that was sufficient for the time. 30 years from that till now, we've evolved to simulations. So someone flying an aircraft or operating a ground vehicle or on a ship or another piece of equipment has a simulator. Easiest way to think about that is from an aircraft standpoint. You're in a simulator, you're flying, you have a joystick and a throttle. That evolved to where you network the simulations together. So because when you're in conflict, you're going to be operating with multiple aircraft. There'll be land forces, so then you could link all of the air assets with ground. So you have the simulation linked together. You can do that with ships as well. And now you have this virtual training environment, and that exists today. SimNet was something, simulation network, started in 80s, 90s, things have progressed now to where you have this vast distributed network of simulators and training that you can actually practice both an individual task like a repair or conduct in operations. And we can talk about where the technology exists today, but that has been the journey with the goal of preparing the men and women that are eventually going into combat to have as much proficiency, as much confidence, and as much ability so that when they're in operations and things don't always go well and everything doesn't go according to plan, they can fall back on the training that we've provided them as realistic, as many times as we can, and frankly, as efficiently as we can, without, and most importantly, without harming them while we're doing the training.
One of the things that I have seen is this. Gaming really is helping to set the foundation for the metaverse. And it strikes me that the military led in that whole area of serious gaming, of being able to take these models and giving it to individuals. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can. I appreciate that comment. So if you go back to the 80s and 90s, there were some military folks that had the foresight to realize that the amount of investment going into games, and I'm a gamer, right? I go all the way back, and we're talking about this here, and I listened to some of the previous interviews. So I had a character in Second Life. I was a big fan of SimCity.
Yeah.
When it went from 2D to 3D, then The Sims as part of that, all the way up to Fortnite, Roblox, Mindframe is similar. Call of Duty, Doom. You think about those games as we transition specifically to the military. So I am, well versed, especially on the user side of that. But the specific answer to your question, there were some leaders that had foresight looking at the gaming industry. Because frankly, a large segment of the gaming industry has to do with we'll just call it defense or warfare in general,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's a large element of that. And how could that be leveraged for the military? And so they came up with a couple, maybe two big threads of that. So one would be in recruiting. So the Army specifically, but other folks use some of the game technology, and they partnered with game companies to create games. It's more on the land forces side, frankly, to help with recruiting. So recruiting folks into the military. Secondarily, they use that same technology for training. So again, you think about a Call of Duty or some of these other games, the engine around those you use for training, ground forces. So think of a Marine or Army soldier, with a hand weapon, in ground force combat. But also you think of the Air Force from a simulation side. So the amount of money and investment going into games has bolstered the military's ability to recruit and train its soldiers, airmen, sailor, and now space guardians. And that investment has also bolstered a lot of other industry, like movies, et cetera. So what you're seeing is, you think about the metaverse itself, when we're specific to the military, but other industries have benefited from that investment. And we can talk, if you'd like, to the extent of where that exists today and where that's going to go in the future. There's the one thing I will mention, Ty, that it's always important. And when you think about defense of the country, it's done by 20-year-olds, right? Regardless of what's in the movies, regardless of what we're told, the people that are in combat, the people that don't come back, are generally in their 20s, right? And so going forward, defense of the country is going to be in the hands of 20-year-olds. So 10 years from now, it'll be in the hands of people that are 10 years old today, that are 12, 15. And so it's important to me, having worn a uniform for 20 some years, to make sure we're keeping up, with that generation, but also leveraging the extraordinary skills they have, a large subset of that, which was developed because of all the games they've played in their lifetime.
Dr. Jones, I'm glad you said that. I've been out there on submarines.
Mm-hmm.
I've had numerous aircraft carrier landings. I've been up there, looking at refueling of a large aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
And it always strikes me about the youth. They are young. They are 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds that we call to duty all the time.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, and I know your passion for veterans, with that said, how does the metaverse, what are the opportunities to help protect those young people that are sacrificing or giving their lives to the protection of our country? How does that blend in?
Okay, now it's a good question. So let's talk about what exists today. So we'll focus on training, because that's easier to understand. And so and there's two types of training. We'll talk about both combat and non-combat, right? Because I think that's for the sake of time. So think about a maintainer. So I'm a maintenance officer. So right now we have virtual reality systems where, and let's say an airman is working on an aircraft, or a soldier's working on a tank, can put on the goggles and manipulate in a virtual world and practice. They can train today, right? And they can reach for equipment and do all of those things. So that exists today. What's coming will be augmented reality, right? So they'll wear some type of device where they will look out into the real world so they can see everything, but then there will be, the engine, for example, it'll highlight on their goggle which tube or which wire is defective. And then they can look down at their tool chest. It'll highlight which tool to grab, right? And then they'll be able to repair that with augmentation. What I see in the metaverse going forward in this example, they'll be able to be immersed in a 3D world, and it'll be as though they're standing next to somebody who's actually showing them how to fix it. And they will feel like they're standing next to a person, even though that person is miles away and all the other trainees are in completely different areas. They will all be in an environment. They'll be able to interact. That person will be, a trainee will be able to point and say, what did you do with this? What did you do with that? They'll be able to have feedback. in that, directly in real time, the person will be able to interact with all the other classmates in this 3D virtual, and they'll be able to try it, and there'll be feedback on their hands via devices and sensing. So we will go from kind of a virtual kind of standalone to you'll be in a 3D environment where you're standing next to somebody who's actually explaining to you how to fix whatever it needs to be repaired. And then when you go back to the real world, you'll have augmented reality, and you'll be able to actually see what you're doing with aids that are on a screen. If we then translate that into combat, there's some systems now that exist where pilots can fly and train. You don't want to have a lot of planes flying around because it's dangerous. And so what you will have in the future is they already wear goggles. They'll look up in the sky, and projected on the goggles will be another plane, right? And that plane will be projected so they're not close to the plane the person's in, but they'll be able to train. And if you can project that plane, then you can project lots of things. As you know, air-to-air refueling is very dangerous.
It is.
2 planes at the same time. What if the person's in the fighter just projects the refueling aircraft? And they do that over and over again. So they're in the plane, so not in a simulation, but on their goggles, they look out and there's a plane there. You think about soldiers in combat. You think about training. Again, if they're wearing goggles, you could project, enemy combatants. You can project things. So they're out in the field, so they're not, at a desk, but you can project that training. Then they can go to a 3D world and interact in a way that they could do maybe 2D now with soldiers, with debriefings, with training in that completely immersive world. That's the next step when you think about military simulation as far as training. Then you can take that as far as operation, logistics, medicine. You could have the same type of impact. And then the last thing I'll add is from a morale standpoint, right? Our folks will be overseas. So I think about a future where now, if they want to reconnect with their family, they're overseas and their family's in the US, they do that via 2D video. I see a world in the future where they can be immersive and interact with their family as though they're there with them. Right. So from a morale standpoint, I see that. So, I'll end with that because we talk a lot about training, we talk about operation. I think that's important. Taking care of the men and women, the professionals that are in harm's way, and making sure they're connected with their family. The family's part of the military. It's going to be just as important as everything else I talked about.
Listen, we're dealing with issues, and I'm saying this, so I'm not asking you to say it, but we're dealing with issues of suicide, mental issues, so many deployments that so many of our men and women have had to do. So I can see the world you just described, where you can go into a metaverse and it's a replica or a digital twin of even your house.
Correct.
And what impact that can truly have on the morale of our men and women. I think this part of the discussion has been very important, that people understand how our men and women have been trained in using technology and gaming up to now, and how that's going to be pushed into the future. But we've got a few minutes. Tell us a little bit about your transition over to Northrop Grumman and how you took all of that knowledge in 20 years in a uniform, the impact that had.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, so a quick discussion about me. So I went to undergrad as a.
No, we're going to save that for the next part.
We just want to talk about
it. We just want to talk about Northrop. Continue that part of the discussion.
Okay, so what I'd say that as far as working at Northrop Grumman, having been deployed to Afghanistan, having been in the military, and really having been in a place in the desert where lives were dependent on the technology that I was provided to do the job and trained on. If you want to ask me what was the number one thing, I took that back to me when I was working at Northrop Grumman, knowing that somewhere, somehow, somebody's lives would be dependent on the services and equipment and technology that we designed and developed and provided, and being able to see how that would be used by the end user. And anybody in uniform, we had lots of people in the military, worked at Northrop Grumman and all the defense agencies, been able to translate the effect that the equipment and services would have to the men and women in uniform, and bringing that back really was the number one thing I would point to is what I brought back to Northrop Grumman. And probably second would be that the men and women, the young folks, are highly skilled and highly motivated, and we could push more technology and more things to them than we're doing, where it's too slow to do it. I would trust them more, trust them at a younger age, put more of the equipment in their hands earlier, and have them give us feedback on how to use it. Because technology is moving faster, warfare and conflicts moving faster than our current systems design, develop, and push out technology. When you take something from the gaming, where they're quick to come up with new technology, push it out, right? Sometimes this thing's not 100% correct, but they have the users figure it out and they end up being a good game. I think that type of philosophy we could use a bit more in the military, in the military industrial complex, so not just on the defense side. But from a Northrop Grumman side, I tried to get some of that, just move a little bit quicker, get technology in the hands of our men and women. And I think we did a pretty good job of that when I was there.
Well, you certainly did. And you were, you've been a real champion and very important, a great American for us. Listen, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about who Dr. Jones, the man, who is he? What was his journey? How did he get here to be one of the most distinguished Americans and doing so much for our nation? And then we're gonna kind of play around with what does the future look like here in this space that we're dealing with? Because the military, by the way, the internet was created by of the military. So everything that we see, a lot of our healthcare has been generated. A lot of the most research that's been done was by the Department of Defense. So they have led not only in desegregation, not only in equal opportunity, but they have led in technology that then gets pushed out on a commercial level. And so that's why we have Dr. Jones here. Listen, we're going to catch you on the other side.
Okay.
Take a quick break. Thanks. METAQUAKE USA is everything will always be live.
METAQUAKE USA with Tyrone Taborn will be right back after these messages.
Calling all future STEM pioneers, leaders, and career champions. Join us on every second Saturday of the month for the BEA Career Day. BEA STEM Career Day is all about creating opportunities for students to venture into the world of STEM through the eyes of professionals. You'll meet mentors and presenters that will give you a sneak peek into the many options available to you in the field of STEM. Hosted by teen ambassadors, you'll find yourself among inspiring peers just like yourself that are aiming high for their future. To take part in the BEA STEM Career Day on Zoom, visit fullstemahead.us and register for the next session. Again, that's fullstemahead.us. BEA, becoming everything you are.
A world of careers unleashed. You can get it at BEA. Become everything you are.
METAQUAKE USA is everything will always be live.
Welcome back to METAQUAKE USA with Tyrone Taborn.
Welcome back to METAQUAKE USA. Before the pandemic, 17 million students did not have access to hardware, broadband, or even content on the internet. We created a generation that's lost. Because once they were out of the classrooms, the opportunity of them to learn was greatly reduced. This happened at a time when Chris Jones was just leaving Northrop. And because of him, he purchased thousands of copies of Becoming an Engineer. Little did we know how valuable those publications would be. We were able to bring students online, have career days, and physically ship magazines Becoming an Engineer to them. You know, in that moment of which they had no role models, of which they had no information in their hands, and they barely had access to classrooms, we continue to try to engage our young people in making the impossible possible. So, Dr. Jones, I really like to thank you. On your way out the door, you made sure that that valuable tool of becoming an engineer was actually there. Now, I know that hits your heart in a very special way about your journey. Can you tell us a bit about your journey?
Yeah, no problem, Ty. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity. And so, as you will see, and I talk a little bit about myself, I don't like doing it, but I appreciate the question. One of the aspects of my life that I tried to live by, that the people that helped me, I tried to pay them back. And so I would probably characterize my life as probably a life of service, if I had to sum it up. So I grew up in northern Maryland. Grew up in a kind of a military family. My dad was in World War II. Uncle was in World War II. I had 4 brothers. They all joined the military. My parents didn't have a lot of money, so so they sent me to private school for high school. So I was the first person, I think, in my family that went to any private school. And it was a high school. There were 4 Black people and about 800 total people. And so a couple of things happened because of that. I was around a lot of different people. So you get to really understand people. You're around them, right? Not just read about them or talk about them. And then 2, I was motivated to do well in school because my parents gave me that opportunity. So I went to Georgia Tech as undergrad. I was an Air Force ROTC scholarship, then joined the military active duty. For 5 years, I was a spy. So I spied on other people's weapon systems and did some other things. I got 2 master's degrees part-time when I was in the military, full-time. Then I separated and got a Ph.D. in helicopter flight dynamics from the University of Maryland. And I actually joined the reserves while I was getting my PhD, then graduated, joined Sikorsky Aircraft, designed helicopters, and transitioned to Northrop Grumman, and worked my way up there, did various jobs, and ended up at the end when I retired being a president of one of the 4 businesses in the company. So I was responsible for about $4 or $5 billion, 12 to 15,000 people globally. And we provided, as we talked about, training, engineering services, depot support, had contractors deployed in operations, IT service, a whole range of activities. So along that way, I wouldn't have made it without my parents, but also without organizations like BEA, NSBE. They all helped me by giving me scholarships or encouragement or support throughout that time, and the military. So I was actually blessed to have 20-year military career, 20-year industry career, and 20 plus years, on and off again in academia, right? And culminating in the AIAA fellow and NAE, and now I'm doing some work with the University of Maryland and Georgia Tech. So I'd say from a success standpoint, I tried to treat people decent. I had a good idea of what was important to me. I always tried to help other people. So when I was undergrad, I did tutoring. People were pledging fraternities. I'd hide them, and do their homework for them. When I won the first Bay Award, when I was a graduate student, did a lot of community outreach. Like you said, a lot of people don't have the same opportunities. I funded scholarships and helped. And I did that part. Do a lot of mentoring. So I tried to give back to folks as much or more than I got from them. But to your point on, what happened during COVID, if that had happened, maybe somewhere in my journey, I would not have ended up where I am today, plain and simple. So, from how did I do all the things I did? A lot of hard work, perseverance, treat people right. But it's also important that we all are in a position to help, someone else. And so I always advocate, no matter where you are. When I was a student, undergrad, I helped other students because I was better at math for whatever reason. So even going all the way back then. So I think it's important for all. I think if we all do that, we'll be better off as a country, especially for the folks like myself that have had the privilege of having, continued success. I tell my kids the same thing. My wife and I are, big proponents of that.
Dr. Jones, if you were talking to me at 18 or even 15, and I listened to everything you just said, I would have sat back and said to myself, he's a special guy. I can never be like him. What would you say to that, to me at 15 or 18, with that belief that I could never achieve or go on the path that you've had, this journey, that I was not worthy of being, or I did not believe enough in myself to think I could get there?
No, I'd say a couple things. When I was 15, I'm not even sure I was going to college. Right. So I thought maybe I'll just graduate, get a job. I thought maybe a truck driver. Seriously, there was none of this Ph.D. Air Force, none of that at age 18. So none of that was there. So I would just say at 18, I decided to go to college. But what I tell folks is it does not matter, what other people do. You don't have to compare them to me or whatever. It's not important. I think what is important is just to work really hard at whatever you're doing today, have some kind of moral foundation in some direction and work really hard at what you're doing today. So I tell a 15-year-old, don't worry about what I did or didn't do. Get all A's. If you can get all A's, just get all A's. Just do that. The 18-year-old, so if 18, if you can't get into college, you don't want to go to college, or, figure out what you want to do, but whatever it is, just do the best you can do at whatever you decide to do.
Live in the moment.
Yeah. So I think if you kind of say, well, who knows? I didn't know what even a 50-year-old person, you have no sense of what that really means. But that was advice people gave me. When I played sports against really big people. I used to play football, Ty. Used to play basketball. They were better than me. They were bigger, stronger. I just worked hard, right? I worked on defense. So at some point, they didn't want me to guard them, right? Because I would just, basketball, I just follow them up and down the court. I wasn't going to be better than them, but I worked my butt off and worked really hard at it. And so that's what I would tell 15, 18-year-olds. You don't have to, it's hard to project what life is going to be. I'd say that's number one. And number two, that 15-year-old is 100 times smarter than I was at 15. I could not get into college. Like Georgia, I couldn't get in there now. I couldn't get into Maryland. The grades, how much they really know. So at a little bit, they underappreciate how much they know about the world, given the internet, given all the technology we talked about. They're actually smarter than some of them give themselves credit. I do a lot of mentoring. So it's a good question. A lot of it's more about self-esteem than that. It's not a capacity issue. It's not. So for some people it is, it's not. So I would tell them, work really hard, get all A's, live in the moment, treat people right, have, moral sense, and have a direction you want to go. If you do the 100% best that you can do today and say, yep, I'm in school and I got the highest grades, then whatever happens, happens. You can live with that. But that would be my advice. And then talk to other people. For younger folks in particular, technology moves so fast. It's a long-winded answer to your question. What's more relevant for them is to talk to somebody maybe 5 years older. What worked for me when I was 15 will not work for a 15-year-old today, right? That the world has moved on. So I would, find somebody that's maybe 5, 6 years older, ask them that question. So I have a 20-year-old son, because he asked me a question, what it took me in my early career to graduate. So I just talk to somebody at Google, Amazon, that's maybe 28, 29 years old, because it's more relevant. How did they get to that point? Because who knows, 15, 50, 40 years from now, it's hard to say what the world would be. But I would just say, do the best you can today and treat people the way they need to be treated.
Dr. Jones, that's very powerful, because I do think that we believe, many of us believe, that this kind of success is not within our grasp. But it is indeed, but it's a journey every moment. So let's talk about that future for a second. You and I talked about how the metaverse.
Right.
And we have about 10 minutes left, but let's talk about what you've said. The metaverse is, you can create the metaverse or use the metaverse. Exactly what did you mean by that?
Yeah. So, in the question about, how does one get engaged in, you can like any technology, it's like autonomy. artificial intelligence, machine learning, right? There's all these technologies, these buzzwords. And so a question is, what do you do with that, right? And sometimes it's, daunting, right? If you don't fully understand. And so I'd like to think of the metaverse as, in a very probably oversimplified way, you can leverage it and use it, or you can create it, right? You can be part of the creation of it, or you can use it. The internet's the same, right? So the internet exists today. You can help write code. You could be a software engineer. You can work on routers. You can, transfer data, cloud. You can do all those things, or you can leverage it. You can have a restaurant, which leverages the internet. So you can have a brick and mortar place where people come and get your food. They can order it online and come and get it, or they can order it online and deliver it. So that's a use of the internet. I see the metaverse is exactly the same. So if you look at some of the building blocks, and we'll just talk about the things we talked about, augmented reality, virtual reality, data science, data analytics, there's probably artificial intelligence. You could jump into those, are all good fields to get into. So if you're earlier career or even mid-career, getting up to speed on what those means, understanding what it would take to be in them, and then deciding whether that would be something you'd like, I think is a path that one could take, right? So if you're early career, you could take courses, you can find out what that is. If that seems like, hey, maybe that's a little bit too technical, I'm not as, you can think about how you would leverage it. So let's say you're an artist and you're creating movie or art or visual. How would the metaverse of the future, how would that content look like? How would you create, where would you create it? At some point, there was no movie theaters. There was no movie sets. There was none of that, right? Those are all inventions based on the ability to project sound and visual aspects in distance onto a screen for people to look at. So if we think about the metaverse as being this virtual kind of 3D environment, what does that mean if you're in a business? That has nothing to do specifically with the metaverse technology. So I think for all of us, it would behoove all of us, there's opportunities to leverage that. In the same way, I would look at it, Ty, very simply. If you could go back to 1990, no matter what business or whatever it was, no matter what it was, it does not make sports. And you could say, hey, the internet's coming. All of us would do certain things, regardless of whether we were in the tech field or not. So I would kind of put yourself in that position now, and you can be part of the creating the metaverse, or you could be kind of a first mover to use it. And whatever you're doing, education, military, it does not make any difference.
That's fascinating. So if I'm sitting here, Dr. Jones, and what I would look at, if I could ask this question, and keeping it within the defense area, what would Northrop be looking for of someone in this new metaverse area? What could I do as a small business trying to get involved? What could I do as an entrepreneur? Or what area as a student right now, what skills should I be grabbing in order to be of value to a Northrop Grumman or any other defense company or the Department of Defense?
Okay, yeah, no problem. So I would look at each of those. I'd put it maybe in time, right? So if you're looking at a small business, we'll start with that, or a business, you want to have an impact today, right? You're a business today. You got payroll next week, right? So what I would look at is you would go to, there's lots of websites. You could go to Air Force Research Lab, right? See what they're investing in today. Listen to their leaders. Go to the podcast. Go to YouTube. Go figure out. They're all disseminating what they're looking for in the next 1, 3, 5 years. And they break that down. You can go by technology readiness level, TR level 1, 2, 3. That's all spelled out what they want, right? And there are, for small businesses, there are organizations that specifically designed and created to help small businesses and help transition commercial civilian technology to military. Those organizations exist, and they exist on the internet. So I would contact those, figure out how to transition into military work if you're not there already. Then go to Northrop Grumman, Lockheed, Boeing. They all have laid out their vision of the near term, 3 to 5 years, and some longer. So if you're a small business, what they're looking for today exists. If you have a little bit of time, you're more of a startup, you got 3 to 5. Again, I'd go to Office of Naval Research, AFRL, Army Research Lab, and they will map out the technologies. Whether it's hypersonics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, data analytics, all of that's there. You can look at 3 to 5 years and see if you've got skills that are aligned with that. If you're a student and you have a little bit more time, then some of the fields that'll be important are the things we talked about. Data science, data analytics. The country's not producing enough of those. Actually, almost any of the sciences, frankly. Almost any STEM, any of the engineering. And so those are all applicable, right, for the metaverse. I would also probably be sure, if I'm kind of undergrad, just be very conversant in computer and IT and technology in general. What you don't want to do, if we start with the student, is get caught up into what fads or what the opportunities are and have that supersede what you like to do. You don't want to, so people make that mistake. Our folks tend to make that mistake, kind of chase jobs or prestige or something, but if they're not real, they don't like it, so then they don't perform as well. So what I'd say for a student is think about what you like to do. So if you like to code, you like software, there's a lot of software development companies. If you're more of a hardware person, router, computer, you do that. If you're more of an engineer and less of a scientist, think about, even training or operations of equipment and how that you could use a metaverse for that. And I'd say for students as well, watch your videos, read your book, get differences of opinions, right? You're going to get different people, difference of opinions. I would get all of that and then make your own decision, right? I have a view, you have a view, your folks have a view. The fact you're going to the trouble of providing this content for different people, very different backgrounds, and then you're going to coalesce all of that. So if you want the Cliff Notes version of that, you can get your book.
That's right.
I would get the book, and I would frankly, get other people's advice. What I would not do is sleep on. Again, I go back. If you were a student in the 1990s and knowing what we know now, right? That's why you put yourself there. Think about what you would do. And maybe you wouldn't do anything different. But I'd say being conversant, that get differences of opinions. But if you're in business, especially for the government and Northrop Grumman, and if I forgot to answer that question, for a Northrop Grumman defense contractor, again, they have organizations where they're looking to partner with small business, with innovation, with that. So you can go to their websites, and they have organizations within each of the companies that will help.
We have been talking to Dr. Christopher Jones, 2016 Black Engineer of the Year. He sat in the back of the room and moved all the way to the front of the stage from student, and he saw the dream, and he was able to make this happen. We want you to stick by. Let me tell you some exciting things about STEM City USA. We're opening 5 more cities in September: STEM City Chicago, STEM City Detroit, STEM City Kansas City, and others. Within a year, there will be STEM cities in over 100 cities throughout the globe. So we're really excited about that. We got a couple of quick messages, and we're going to give you a sneak peek of STEM City Chicago, which is actually going to be more virtual reality than what you're seeing now, which is a 2D metaverse. So hold tight. It's going to blow your socks off. Dr. Jones, what a pleasure, my brother, to be with you. Thank you so much. METAQUAKE USA is everything will always be live.
Thank you for joining this episode of METAQUAKE USA with Tyrone Taborn. Join us next week on METAQUAKE USA for more about the metaverse.
All aboard. Step up, ladies and gentlemen. Doors are closing. Good day, ma'am. Good day, sir. Thank you for boarding. Have your tickets ready. Next stop is downtown Chicago.
chair, breathe for me. The angel of death made my heart beat. Touch so light, weigh me down. A million deaths, 2 lives found. That's for sure. When the night comes, just wait for the train. When the night comes, just wait for the train. When the night comes, just wait for the train. When the night comes, just wait for the train.
Sunsets on the horizon, the night falls. My partner's listening, I'm hoping you might call. Waiting for your words forever, they're unspoken. Promises are made forever, they're unbroken. No breath, no sight, eyes wide open but with no light. Everything about it seems so right. Darkness comes, but I can feel you through the rain. The fire's still burning while I'm waiting for the train. The train, the train, the train.
When the night comes, I'm waiting for the train. When the night comes, I'm just waiting on the train. I'm waiting, waiting, I'm waiting for you, baby. Come on, don't miss the train. It's late.
All right, step up, man.
You can't wait 5 minutes?
I have to close the doors. Is there?
Just 5 minutes more, please.
I cannot wait 5 minutes, ma'am. I am sorry. I got a load full of people to get downtown.
You can't work with me at all.
I'm sorry.